Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you all for tuning into my channel today. Thank you for subscribing to my channel, and thank you for the massive love and support you guys have been showing to my channel. I really appreciate you all. On today's video, I'll be showing you how I made this beautiful flare dress with a layered gathering, a balloon puff sleeve, and side pockets. So please stay tuned, and you have so much to learn on this video. For this dress, we'll be needing up to 4 yards or 4.5 yards of fabric for this style because of the gatherings and the big sleeve. So first thing I did was to cut out about 2 to 2.5 yards of this fabric and placed it on fold. So you can use 2 yards or 2.5 depending on your body size. So I placed it on fold and I picked up the folded end and placed it into another fold, forming a triangle. With this, I have 4 layers of this fabric now after folding it twice, just like I showed you. From the side of this fabric that has the folds without any opening, you are going to place your tape and find your shoulder measurement. So my shoulder measurement is 15 when divided by 2 is 7.5. So I'll just move my tape from the beginning point of this triangular part, the smaller triangular part. I'll move my tape to find where 7.5 would fit in. So when I found the point, I went ahead to rule it out. From that point, I'll measure out my chest line, which is at 8 inches. Then I also measure my shoulder line. Remember, I told you my shoulder is 15 inches when divided by 2 is 7.5. So I pointed out 7.5, 7.5 inches, and I drew a line from that place to meet my chest line. So the line is not necessarily slanted, but because the fabric is on a triangular fold, you just have to work with what you have and place it rightly. So remember, our center front and our center back is at the point that is folded, since this dress won't be needing any zipper. So from that folded point, I placed my tape to get my bust measurement. My bust measurement is 40 inches. When divided by 4, it's 10. Then I added 1 inch allowance for ease and another 1 inch allowance as our sewing allowance. Then I went ahead to extend the line that we have. From the shoulder point, I went ahead to make my armhole just like I'm doing. So I went down and I made a curve at the ending part of this armhole. From my shoulder line, I came down by 1 inch to form my shoulder slope. Then from that line again, I found the midpoint of my armhole. So from the midpoint, I'll be going in by 0.5 inches to form my front armhole. So this will help me get the slant and the slope that I need for my front armhole. I went over to work on my neckline. So my neckline length that I'll be using, the width I'll be using is 3 inches, and the depth for my front piece is also 3 inches. But for my back piece, I'll be using 1.5 inches for the neck depth and 3 inches, the same 3 inches for the neck width. So I just went ahead to connect that of my front piece first, which is 3 by 3 inches. That's 3 inches width and 3 inches depth. Then I went ahead to also get 1.5 inches depth for my back piece. So when I'm cutting, I'll just cut the back piece first before I'll do that of the front. That is after separating the material. I went ahead to form my shoulder slope. That is from the point at my neck to the place that I came down by 1 inch. So from the point where I had my neckline, just on the shoulder line that we have, I'm going to be taking the full length of this dress. The full length I'm working with for this dress is 38 inches. And remember, this dress has a gathered layer on the down part. So I'm just going to measure out the dress without the gathered layer. Then when I'm done with this part of the dress, I'll be attaching the gathered layer differently. So the measurement I'm taking now is that of the part without the gathered layer. And I'll be working with 27 inches because I want the gathered layer to be about 11 inches. So you can just choose to make yours maybe bigger or higher than that length or lower depending on your preference. So while taking the length measurements, I also added 1 inch allowance for joining the gathered layer to this part of the dress. So I'll just go ahead to connect that point of my chest line to the full length of this dress in a slanted form, because this dress is a flare dress, so you won't want it to turn out straight. So you're just going to slope the line and connect it to the full length. Then afterwards, you just go ahead and cut out. For the armhole, I went ahead to add 1/2 inch sewing allowance around it. So I drafted both the front piece and the back piece armhole together, but we just cut out that of the back piece. Then after separating the material, I can now go ahead to do that of the front piece. I also added 1/2 inch sewing allowance on the shoulder region before cutting out. For the neck, I went ahead to cut out that of the back piece first, but I cut it together with the front because the front is deeper than the back. So I just cut out the back first, then I'll go ahead to separate it later to cut out my front piece that has 3 inches depth. I later took off the allowance I had at the shoulder point since I already had allowance, 1 inch allowance at the down part. So I'll just be taking the allowance I need to join the shoulder from the allowance I gave at the down point. So opening up the fabric, this is what I had. As you can see, our flared dress is already turning out fine. So I just went ahead to separate the front piece from the back piece so that we could finish the work on the front piece. I arranged the front piece properly and went ahead to cut out the neckline. For the front piece armhole curve, I went ahead to add 1/2 inch sewing allowance, then I cut off the excess. Opening it up, this is what I have, and as you can see, our flared dress is already coming together. We'll be needing a facing for this dress since we're not using a lining to turn it over. We'll just cut out a piece of fabric and use for the facing to turn over the neckline. So for this facing, I placed the fabric on fold, and from the folded end, I just went ahead to align my dress pattern with the fabric to get a facing. So I traced it out with a chalk and determined how wide I want this facing to be, and I went ahead to cut it out. This is what the facing looks like when I opened it up, and I'll go ahead to do the same for the back pattern. I lined the facing with the neck pattern of the dress and went ahead to pin it down with my pin before sewing it on the machine. So you just sew it with 1/2 inch round across the neckline. This was what it looked like after sewing it round the neckline with 1/2 inch allowance. So I just went ahead to give it a nice notch. You're going to notch it to be able to turn it out. So you should be careful to avoid cutting through the neckline. So opening this up, this was what it looks like on the right side. So the right side of the facing and the right side of the dress, this is what it looks like. And we'll go ahead to run a top stitch on the part of the facing from the right side. So this top stitch will enable the turning of the neck to go well. And this was what it looks like after top stitching it. So with this, your facing won't be turning over to the front, so it will just lay back at the back of the dress. So you can see what the outcome looks like. I went ahead to attach the back facing the same way we did for the front. So the next thing we're going to do is to join the shoulders together. Aligning the front piece and the back piece together at the shoulder point, I will have the facing of the front piece, the back piece, and the facing of the back piece, making it a total of 4 pieces at the shoulder region. So to join my shoulder, I'll pick the back facing, then overlap it on the other 3 pieces, then sew it down with my machine with 1/2 inch, just like you've seen on the video. This was what it looked like after sewing it down on the machine with 1/2 inch. So just go ahead to turn back the back facing where it's supposed to be. We turned it to the front to sew it down. So just like I'm showing, it was like this previously when we sew it down on the machine. So you just lift it up and turn it back to the side where it's supposed to be, and you have your neatly sewn shoulder. So with this, you're not going to see any joining both on the front of the dress and the back of the dress. You won't see how the shoulder was joined. And I also did the same thing on the other shoulder. The next thing I did was to close up the sides of this dress. So from the armhole, I'm just going to run a straight stitch down to the full length of the dress, and I did the same thing for the other side. After sewing down the sides, the next thing I did was to work on my armhole. For some reasons, the armhole became smaller, and one of these reasons is because I didn't add enough joining allowance at the shoulder point. So I'm just going to recut the armhole to get an appropriate armhole for myself. So from the midpoint of this dress, I got my shoulder measurement after dividing by 2. My shoulder measurement is 15 inches. When divided by 2 is 7.5. So from that midpoint, I marked 7.5 inches. And for the armhole depth, I went down by 7.75 inches. That's like almost 8 inches. This will accommodate my arm better. From the point at the shoulder, I'm just going to draw out a straight line to meet the armhole depth. And with this, I'll be able to make my armhole curve. With the help of a curved rule or your free hand, you can just draw out your armhole curve. Then go ahead to add 1/2 inch sewing allowance, just like I'm doing. To cut this out, I'll be placing the fabric on fold to make sure that the two sides are cut equally. So you just have to straighten out your fabric and arrange it properly before you start cutting out. This is what the new armhole looks like. So I just went ahead to measure the two shoulders to be sure that they are equal. For the down part of this dress, I'll first get the round measurements of the bottom part so that I'll know how much fabric I'll be using to form the gathers. To take these measurements, you'll be opening up the fabric that's separating the front from the back. Then you place your tape on one end of the down part and take it to the other end and get your measurement. So mine was 118 inches. From the remaining fabric that I had, I'll just go ahead to measure out the one I'll be needing for the gathers. So the width we are working with is 118 inches plus extra for allowance. You know, we are trying to form a gathering, so we need excess aside from the measured length. So the excess I'll be needing is about 50. You can go ahead to use more or less depending on how much fabric you have. For the length of this layer, I'll be working with 11 inches. You know, the total full length we had at the beginning is 38 inches for the full dress, but the first part was 27 inches, so remaining 11 inches to make up for the total 38 inches. I'm just going to mark out 11 inches on my fabric and add 2 inches sewing allowance, which will make it 13. And because of the quantity of the fabric I have, it was not going to cut out the 118 inches plus 50 at the same time, so I cut it out in sections. So just make sure that when you're cutting out, you cut it out as much as the fabric allows you to. I cut mine in 3 sections, so this is what I had after joining the 3 sections together to form one long piece. I also went ahead to fold the ends of this fabric. So one end is going to serve as our final down part, while the other end will serve as the parts we are joining to our dress that we already have. The parts we are joining to our upper dress, I made a loose running stitch just around the fold that we have. So this loose running stitch will serve as the stitch we are using for our gathering. The running stitch we made on the end that we're attaching to the fabric will just go from one end of this fabric that we're using for the gathering to the other end at the part that we're attaching to the dress. So at one end, I'm just going to leave a thread just like I'm showing you. So from that thread, we'll start pulling the fabric to form our gather. Just pull it the way I'm showing you, and as you're pulling, be careful so that the thread does not cut, else you start from the beginning. So as you're pulling it, just be pushing the folds, the gatherings that you have to the other end of this fabric. This was what it looked like after gathering. I also went ahead to measure how long this gathering is so that I'm sure it fits into the measurements that we have for the dress, which is 118 inches. So on the dress, I'll mark out ½ inch. So I'll be attaching this gathering with ½ inch on the dress, just round the bottom part of this dress. From the design of the dress, the gathers are placed on top of the dress, that's on top of the right side of the fabric, not inside. So you're just going to place it like that, and if you have a weaving machine, you can go ahead to weave the end of your dress before placing this or before attaching your gatherings on it. This is just a demonstration on how you go about it on the sewing machine. When you start sewing, make sure you separate the front piece and the back piece. So you just start from one end and start placing your gatherings on top of the right side of your fabric. As you sew, you just have to keep in check that the gatherings aligns with the measurements of the dress, and also you keep extending your line to know the point of attachment. I'm done attaching the layered parts of this dress on the front part. So this was what it looked like. So just in case you didn't understand what I did, this is what your dress should look like after sewing on the right side. I went ahead to close this up by joining the two ends together with a straight stitch, and also closed it up at the gathering part. Moving on to the sleeve of this dress, I placed my fabric on fold. Then I'll go ahead to pick up the folded end and put it into a triangular fold, just like we did for the dress. I measured out 8 inches from the point where I want this sleeve to start, and from that 8 inches I'll go down by 13 inches. So this 13 inches will serve as the length of my sleeve with the allowance that I need included. So I gave 2 inches allowance for joining this sleeve to the dress and also for folding the other end. From this upper end, I came down by 5 inches to form our armhole curve, and I just went ahead to curve it out just like I'm doing. And from that point that we have, I'll take it down to meet the full length of the sleeve. And remember, this sleeve we're making is a balloon puff sleeve, so it's going to have a puff at the upper end. So for that puff, I went ahead to add the allowance I needed for the puff, just like I did. How high you go or the amount of allowance you add for this puff will determine the fullness of your puff. So I'll just go ahead to cut out what I have now. I'll be cutting out the bias I need to close up the end of the sleeve, creating a space for our elastic that will help us form the balloon sleeve. I used 1.5 inches for the width of this bias, and I'll just go ahead to mark it out throughout the length of the fabric. With the bias strip that we have now, we'll just go ahead to fold the ends of this sleeve. So I'm just going to place the right side of the bias on the right side of the sleeve, then take it down to the machine, sew it, fold it inwards and sew it again. You can see what it looks like now after turning the end part of this sleeve with the bias, and now we've created a channel for our elastic. At the other end of this sleeve, the part we are joining to the armhole of our dress, I went ahead to make a running stitch around the puff area. Then I dragged it just like we did to form gathers that will make our puff turn out nice. So you just be sewing from here to here and form your gathers. This is what it should look like when you're done. To join your sleeve with the dress, you're just going to face the puff that we made to align with the shoulder part. Then you take it to your machine and sew down the sleeves. But before then, we'll be adding our elastic band into the channel that we made. So with the help of a safety pin, we're going to be driving the band through the channel. The length of the elastic that we'll be needing is your round sleeve measurement minus 1 or 2 inches. So measure out the amounts that you'll be needing and cut it out. Then you start to insert from one end of the sleeve, push it till you reach the other end. When you're done with this and you have your safety pin come out through the other end of the sleeve, you just go ahead and lock down the two ends of the sleeve where you have your elastic. With that being done, you can go ahead to attach your sleeve to the armhole of your dress. This is what your sleeve should look like when you're done attaching it. So you can see the end that we had the elastic, and also you can see how we went ahead to attach the sleeves, the upper end of the sleeves to the armhole. Then we locked it down at the sides, just like I've shown you. I went ahead to do the same for the other sleeve. So the final step of this dress is to work on our pocket, and for the pocket we are going with an inner side pocket. That is the type of pocket we are fixing, and for this pocket I'll be working with a width of 7.5 inches and a length of 10 inches. So just go ahead and mark out on a folded fabric your 7.5 inches width and 10 inches length. On the part of this fabric that is not folded, you're going to go ahead to form your pocket loop or curve at that end. Then you go ahead and cut this out. This is just for one pocket, so you're going to repeat this process on another folded fabric for your second pocket. We'll be attaching these sleeves on the inside of the dress and at the sides. So we're going to mark out 17 inches from our shoulder point to the side of the dress that we are attaching this pocket. So from that 17 inches, it will serve as the beginning of the opening of this pocket. So how wide we want to open it to be is 7 inches. So from your 17 inches point, just go down and mark your 7 inches for the opening of your pocket. There are different techniques that you can use to attach your pocket. So you can either attach the pocket when you're sewing the dress or after the dress is being sewn. But for the course of this tutorial, I already made the dress, so I'll just be showing you how to attach it on a sewn dress. I just gave a mark to help me differentiate the front and the back part of this pocket. So you open up the sides of your allowance for the dress and also open up your pocket, because you know the pocket was on fold. So from one end of the pocket, you'll be placing it on the one allowance that you had, like the front allowance, and you place from the mark that you had 17 inches to down to where your 7 inches opening stops. You sew it down with half an inch on the machine. Then you open all the pockets and do the same for the back piece allowance. Place it together from that mark where our 17 inches stops down to the 7 inches opening that we had. So you just do like I've shown you and sew it down on the machine with half-inch allowance. After sewing down your pockets on the machine, this is what it should look like. So we went ahead to sew it from the mark that we had from our 17 inches down to our 7 inches opening. So you're going to just start from that point and end where your 7 inches ends, and later we'll close the remaining open parts up. So I did the same thing for the back allowance. I attached the pocket also on it. For the remaining open ends of this pocket, I'm just going to sew it on the machine from the line of stitching we had on the dress, just the stitching line before the allowance we have. So I'm going to sew it from there right through to the whole length of the pocket upwards, and same thing from the down part right through the whole length of the pocket downwards. So I hope you understand what I mean clearly. Just from the major line of stitching, you cover the up part. Also from the major line of stitching, you cover the down part. And I'm done sewing down the ends of this pocket, and this is what it looks like. The next thing we're going to do now is to open up the major stitches we have on our dress around the place that we marked out as the opening of our pocket. I'll be using my machine needle to open up these stitches. You can as well use ordinary needles or any other tool that can aid you open it gently to avoid loosening up other parts of this dress. So remember, this opening of stitches is from the point that we measured out 17 inches down to the point we marked out our 7 inches opening for the pocket. So you don't have to go beyond these 2 points. And when you're done with that, you go to the machine and make a tight stitch around those 2 points to secure the ends. Flipping the dress to the right side, this is what our pocket looks like on the side of the dress. So as you can see, it's wide enough to accommodate the hands. So this is what your pocket should look like when you're done sewing it down. And with that, guys, we've come to the end of this tutorial. As you can see, our dress turned out very beautiful and nice, and you can go ahead to pair with a beautiful shoe and a bag. I hope you found this tutorial helpful and valuable. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel for more of these videos. Thank you for watching. Until next time, bye!